श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरण मोहन जू की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमार भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद शतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोरक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानुगौरी गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर प्रसाद वृंद की जय। नामचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाता गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री उद्धव-गीत की जय। श्री विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर की जय। सरर्थ दर्शनी वृत्ति की जय। श्रील भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। तदीय अनुभाष्य टीका की जय। I know, is this अनुभाष्य की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायण। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमो वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सार्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतं। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamam charanantikam bhaktya vihina aparada lakshay kshiptastakama ditaranga madhe kripa mai tvam sharanam prapanna vrinde namaste charanarvindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Bol, everybody. Dandavat Pranams, Gargaraj Ji, Raseshwari Mataji, Rukmini Didi, Indira Mataji, Sanchayan Mandal, Madhavi Didi, Sudevi Didi, Pradumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, and everyone else watching. Please accept my pranam. So now we are commencing the Uddhava-gīta. Well, we already read the 7th chapter, which was the first chapter of Uddhava-gīta, but now we're going back again and starting from the beginning. And we're reading this translation by, I actually didn't know about this book, and then Rukmini Didi yesterday, she told me about it. And this has the commentary of Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura and Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Prabhupāda. And it's also translated by Bhumipati Prabhu, who I greatly admire. Really amazing Vaishnava. So I'm excited to start this. This morning I read the introduction and I thought it was good. And so I'm going to read it. It's written by somebody named Ishwar Prabhu. I don't know who that is. But So we'll read this introduction. I didn't have time to set up our reading. Like, I don't know where we're going to read up to. I'm just going to read until it's 8:30. But then after that, I prepared all these chapters here with the word count so that I'll be able to easily plan out our readings for the next, until we get to the end. All right, so introduction. One second. Okay, Rukmini Didi said Ishwar Prabhu was the publisher of Touchstone Media, but she thinks he's retired now. Okay, cool. And this book was published by Touchstone Media. Okay, introduction. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shala. Oh, we already said all these. Except we didn't do this. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Vitang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitangscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutte Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Okay. Uddhava-gīta. Why does it say Uddhava-gīta? It's Uddhava-gīta, isn't it? Anyways. I think it is. Uddhava-gīta is a hidden treasure practically unknown to the people of the world, and the reason for this is certainly a great mystery. Uddhava-gīta was personally spoken by Lord Shri Krishna just prior to his disappearance from this material world more than 5,000 years ago. It is the Lord's final instructions imparted to his dear devotee Shri Uddhava. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, wrote about the Uddhava-gīta. Lord Shri Krishna, this is Śrīla Prabhupada's words, Lord Shri Krishna is factually the spiritual master of the three worlds, and he is the original source of all Vedic knowledge. It is very difficult, however, to understand the personal feature of the Absolute Truth, even from the Vedas. His personal instructions are needed in order to understand the personality of Godhead as the Supreme Absolute Truth. Bhagavad-gīta is the evidence of such transcendental knowledge in gist. One cannot know the Supreme Lord unless one is graced by the Lord himself. Lord Krishna exhibited the specific mercy towards Arjuna and Uddhava while he was in the material world. Undoubtedly, Bhagavad-gīta was spoken by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to encourage Arjuna to fight. And yet, to complete the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad-gīta, the Lord instructed Uddhava. So this is the completion of Bhagavad-gīta, this Uddhava-gīta. The Lord wanted Uddhava to fulfill his mission and disseminate knowledge which he had not spoken even in Bhagavad-gīta. From this we can understand that although Uddhava-gīta contains instructions similar to those imparted to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it also contains very confidential teachings that are not available even in Bhagavad-gīta. The five truths that embody the teachings of Bhagavad-gīta, that is Ishvar, the Supreme Lord, the Jiva, the living entities, material nature, Kala, time, and Karma, activities. So all those teachings which embody the Bhagavad-gīta are fully elaborated upon in the Uddhava-gīta. The Vedic literature offers us many Gitas, or songs. There are the Gita Govinda, the Venu-gīta, Bhramar-gīta, Gopi-gīta, Avanti-gīta, Bhagavad-gīta, Uddhava-gīta, and many more. What's the Avanti-gīta? I don't even know what that is. All of these Gitas have one thing in common. They are either songs of Lord Hari himself or of his devotees. In either case, the purpose of these songs is to invoke our forgotten eternal loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. Thus, the songs found in the Vedic literature are not like the ordinary songs of this material world, which are compared to the croaking of frogs, simply inviting the snake of death. Near the end of Krishna's manifest pastimes in this material world, 5,000 years ago, the demigods, headed by Brahma and Shiva, went to see him at Dwarka. At that time, they submitted this appeal. This is what we read about in the previous chapters of the 11th canto. So, Brahma, Shiva, and the other demigods, they appealed to the Lord. My dear Lord, previously we had requested you to remove the burden of the earth. O unlimited personality of Godhead, that request has now been fulfilled. You killed innumerable demons in order to protect your devotees, and you re-established the religious principles that had been forgotten in the course of time. You have certainly broadcast your glories throughout the world so that everyone can easily become purified simply by hearing about you. Descending into the dynasty of King Yadu, you have manifested your unique transcendental form, and for the benefit of the entire universe, you have executed magnanimous transcendental pastimes. My dear Lord, pious and saintly persons who, in the age of Kali, hear and chant narrations of your transcendental pastimes will easily cross over the dense darkness of that terrible age. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, O my Lord, you have descended into the Yadu dynasty, and thus you have spent 125 autumns with your devotees. My dear Lord, there is nothing remaining for your lordship to do on behalf of the demigods. O Lord, you are the basis of everything, and if you so desire, then kindly return to your own abode in the spiritual world. There's nothing left remaining for you to do on behalf of the demigods, so whenever you want, you can go back. Lord Shri Krishna replied, I have very well understood your prayers. I have certainly executed my duty of removing the burden of the earth. But if I depart from my own abode at this time, the members of the Yadu dynasty will constitute another great burden. Therefore, before I depart from this world, I shall arrange for the withdrawal of the Yadu dynasty. Thereafter, Lord Krishna inspired Durvasa Muni and other sages to curse the members of the Yadu dynasty, so that while quarreling with each other, they would be annihilated. Lord Krishna then met the elder members of the Yadu dynasty and informed them, "Because of the curse of the Brahmanas, I see many inauspicious omens foreboding great disturbances and destruction. We should therefore go to Prabhas Tirtha, which is a very sacred place. There we will be able to counteract the ill effects of all our sinful activities by satisfying the Brahmanas with gifts of charity." Then, in obedience to the Lord's desire, the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Prabhas Tirtha, and a fire sacrifice was performed. At that time, the men of the Yadu dynasty drank an intoxicating beverage that made them forget everything, even the identities of their mothers, brothers, fathers, children, and friends. Being completely intoxicated by the will of the Lord, they fought with each other, and the result was the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. Actually, the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty was a display of the Lord's illusory energy, his Maya. The Yadavas are eternal associates of the Lord, and therefore eternally liberated souls. When he had contemplated winding up... Am I remembering correctly, though? I thought some of the Yadus were demigods. I thought we read that. That some of the Yadus were demigods, and after... They would go back to Swarga Loka, some of them. Am I remembering correctly, or did I make that up? When he had contemplated winding up his pastimes within the material world, the Lord considered how, in his absence, the members of the Yadu dynasty would suffer greatly in separation from him. It is for this reason that the Lord arranged for their return to his supreme abode before his own departure from the material world. Thereafter, Lord Balaram appeared in his form of Sheshnag and departed from this world. Lord Shri Krishna then sat underneath a banyan tree, meditating upon himself. At that time, Uddhava came before him and prayed, "My dear Lord, I know that you want to return to your eternal abode in the spiritual sky. I cannot bear to live without you, and so please take me with you." Lord Shri Krishna replied, "There is something remaining for you to do on my behalf in this world, and so you must stay here for some time. I will now disclose to you the most confidential understanding of religious principles, whereby even a blind man can easily follow the path and ultimately attain pure love for me. After understanding this most confidential subject matter, it will be your duty to impart it to the sages residing at Badarikashram, headed by Nar Narayan Rishi." The reason for the Lord's descent into the material world was revealed by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad-gīta 4.9. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam dharmasya tadatmanam sajamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. The Lord executed his will himself, as well as through the agency of his dear devotees. It is explained by the Lord in the Bhagavad-gīta 4.3 that only his pure devotees are fit to receive his revelation and pass it on to others. Sa evayam mayatedya yoga prokta puratana bhakto si me sakacheti rahasyam hetaruttamam. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee, as well as my friend, and therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. The Lord had already delivered the science of the Supreme to his dear friend and devotee, Arjuna. Now, before enacting his pastime of disappearance from the material world, he desired to deliver more confidential understandings, and he considered Sri Uddhava to be the fit candidate for receiving these instructions. The unique qualification of Sri Uddhav was revealed by the Lord himself in a verse of the Uddhava-gīta. Na tata me priyatama atmayonir na shankara na cha sankarshano na shrir naivatma cha yatha bhavan. No one is as dear to me as you, O Uddhav, not my son Brahma, not Shiva who is born out of my very body, not my brother Sankarshan, not Lakshmi, my consort who dwells eternally on my chest. Even my own body is not as dear to me as you are. Asma lokar uparate mai jnanam arashrayam arhatu dava evadha sampratyatma vatam vara. Now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhav, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who can be directly entrusted with knowledge about me. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, commented on this verse as follows. Jnanam mad ashrayam is significant in this verse. Transcendental knowledge has three departmental divisions, namely knowledge of impersonal Brahman, knowledge of the all-pervading Supersoul, and knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Out of the three, transcendental knowledge of the personality of Godhead has special significance and is known as Bhagavat Tattva Vigyan, specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. This specific knowledge is realized by pure devotional service and no other means. Bhagavad-gīta 1855 confirms this. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvata. Only persons engaged in devotional service can factually know the transcendental position of the Lord. Uddhav was considered to be the best amongst all the devotees of that time, and therefore he was directly instructed by the Lord's grace so that people might take advantage of Uddhav's knowledge after the disappearance of the Lord from the vision of the world. This is one of the reasons why Uddhav was advised to go to Badarik Ashram, where the Lord is personally represented by the Nar-Narayan deity. As Uddhav was being instructed by the Lord in this most confidential understanding of the science of the Supreme, he posed the following question. The entire world is entangled in household life. How can the world's population be liberated and develop attachment for you? The Lord knew that soon after his departure, the earth would be consumed by the powerful effects of Kali Yuga, and so he advised his dear devotee not to remain in household life, but instead to take a life of renunciation and go to the place in the Himalayas where the great sages reside. One might ask, why was Uddhav instructed to renounce the material world and go to the forest? After all, he was already a liberated devotee and a dear associate of the Lord. The answer is that just as Uddhav was put into illusion on the battlefield of Kurukshetra so that the Lord could speak the Bhagavad-gīta to him, and thus to the entire world, similarly, Uddhav was advised to stay in this world after the Lord's departure, just so that he could deliver these final and most confidential instructions to the sages at Badarik Ashram, and thus to the entire world. This conversation between the Lord and his dear devotee has been appropriately named Uddhava-gīta, although Lord Krishna is the speaker and Uddhav is the listener of the divine song. Uddhava-gīta begins by citing an ancient conversation that took place between Maharaj Yadu and a wandering mendicant, who, although naked, appeared quite healthy and self-satisfied. The Srimad Bhagavatam 126 reveals how one can be happy in this world. Savai pungsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir yatoksaje ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. The supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Such a self-satisfied person always engages in remembering Lord Sri Krishna's transcendental pastimes. Yadu Maharaj offered his respects to the contented and naked wandering mendicant and said, "I would like to know something. You are naked and you have no possessions. You do not beg for your subsistence, and you roam freely throughout the world. How is it that you look so happy and healthy? I want to know about this." In response, the naked sage explains how he had attained the state of self-realization by accepting 24 teachers. By observing their characteristics, he had attained his exalted spiritual status as an unattached and self-satisfied person. Uddhava-gīta contains unparalleled instructions of the Lord that are not found anywhere else in this world. Many subjects were briefly discussed by Lord Krishna when he spoke the Bhagavad-gīta to Arjuna. In the Uddhava-gīta, these subjects are dealt with more elaborately, and they are explained in a way that they can be practically applied. We can understand that although Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad-gīta on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in just about 45 minutes, he spoke to Uddhava while comfortably seated beneath a banyan tree, and thus was able to impart more detailed and confidential instructions. Being at ease, Uddhava was free to pose numerous technical questions on a variety of subject matters pertaining to the perfection of spiritual life, and the Lord replied without constraints. It is our great fortune to be able to present the Uddhava-gīta, which is contained within the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam as a separate book. The 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam has been described as the crown on the head of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and beginning the study of that great literature with the first canto is considered to be meditation upon the lotus feet of the Lord. This present edition presents the commentaries of two great Vaishnava masters in our disciplic succession, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura and Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Ṭhākura, the spiritual master of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, who revealed Lord Krishna to the entire world while distributing his sacred teachings, culminating in the Uddhava-gīta. Both these great Vaishnav masters, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura and Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Ṭhākura, need no introduction, as their names speak volumes for the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They played prominent roles in the movements to propagate the teachings of Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya throughout the modern world. Although I am most insignificant, I pray that the publication of this book will bring delight to the dear devotees of the Lord and shed some enlightenment upon the bewildered people of this world. In this way, I hope to be greatly benefited, hoping to remain the servant of those who are aspiring to be the servants of the Lord. Ishwar Das, completed in Sri Mayapur Dham, Ram Navami, 2007. Whoa. So this book was completed in Ram Navami, and that's just in 3 days from now. All right. Lord Krishna, so chapter 1. Let me just check the comments really quick. Okay. Hare Krishna Shasharmaji. Okay, so the song of the Avanti Brahman is also in the 11th canto. Okay, that's why I didn't know about it, because I haven't read the 11th canto yet. Oh, Satyaraj Prabhu also wrote a book on the 11th canto, or on the Uddhava-gīta, Pradyumna Prabhu. And he called it Krishna's Other Song. Oh, okay, that's Satyaraj Prabhu's thing. He called it Krishna's Other Song. Interesting. Yeah, am I correct? Maybe we can check that out as well later on. Okay, chapter 1. Lord Krishna instructs Uddhava. Chapter summary. This chapter describes how Uddhava requested the Lord to grant him permission to go back to Godhead, and how, in response, the Lord suggested that he take to the renounced order of life. It also deals with the Avadut's description of 24 spiritual masters. 1 second, I'm just drinking some water. After hearing the prayerful request of Uddhava, Sri Krishna revealed to him his desire to return to his eternal abode, since the purpose of his appearance in this world had been fulfilled. The Lord also indicated that soon after his disappearance, Kali will create great disturbances. Yeah, Kali would create great disturbances in the world. So Uddhav should take sannyas, fix his mind upon him, and live in this temporary world without attachment, while acting as the benefactor of all living entities. Uddhav replied by saying that apart from the devotees of the Lord, detachment from matter, which is the cause of spiritual advancement, is extremely difficult for those who are very attached to sense gratification. He requested the Lord to give him some instructions so that materialistic people who consider the body as a self could attain perfection. Uddhav told the Lord that he had taken shelter of him as the only instructor because he is free from all faults, omniscient, the Lord of Vaikuntha, and the friend of all living entities. After hearing Uddhav's request, the Supreme Lord said that the spirit soul himself can act as his spiritual master, and thus the human form of life is very dear to him. In this connection, the Lord related to Uddhav a conversation between an Avadut and King Yadu that took place long ago. Once, King Yadu, the son of Yayati, happened to see an Avadut who is happily wandering about here and there, sometimes acting like a materialist, sometimes like a madman, and sometimes like one haunted by a ghost. When King Yadu asked the Avadut about the cause of his ecstatic wanderings, he replied that he was traveling throughout the world as he liked after having received instructions from 24 spiritual masters, such as the earth, air, sky, water, and fire. Due to these instructions, he was able to wander over the earth in a liberated condition of life. From the earth, he learned how to become steady. He also learnt from the mountains and trees of the earth how to do good to others, how to live in this world only for the sake of others' benefit. From the life air, he learned how to remain satisfied with whatever is easily achieved for keeping the body and soul together. In addition, from the external air, he learned how to remain aloof from bodily sense enjoyment. From the sky, he learns that the spirit soul, which is all-pervading throughout the body, is always pure and free from any contamination. From water, he learns how to remain naturally pure and sanctified. From fire, he learns to eat anything and yet not become contaminated. He also learns that a charitable person will never face inauspiciousness. He learns that the spirit soul is that which illuminates every material body, and that the appearance and disappearance of the living entity at the times of birth and death is unseen. From the moon, he learns how the material body develops and then dwindles. From the sun, he learns how, despite remaining in contact with the objects of enjoyment, one can remain unentangled. He also learned how to see the spirit soul as unchangeable, while the material body is simply a designation. From the pigeon, he learns about the consequences of too much affection for one's family. A person who, in spite of receiving the human form of life, which is considered the gateway to liberation, becomes attached to family life like a pigeon, will certainly fall down, even though he has attained a superior platform after much struggle. So now we begin. Text 1. Okay. Satyaraj Das wrote a book called Krishna's Other Song on just Uddhava-gīta. Cool, I will check that out. And if I think it's appropriate, maybe we can read that as well. Or maybe read it afterwards. I don't know. I'll have to check it out first. I like Satyaraj Prabhu. He's a really nice person. Okay, so we're beginning Uddhava-gīta. This is, I think, chapter 7 of the 11th canto. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yad Atta Bhaga Tachchakirshitame me Brahma Bhavo Lokapala Swarvasam me Bikankshina. The Supreme Lord said, O most fortunate Uddhav, what you have ascertained about my desire to destroy the Yadu dynasty and then return to Vaikuntha is correct. This is actually my desire, and Brahma, Shiva, and the other demigods are praying for me to return to my abode in Vaikuntha. Sarartha Darshini commentary by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. The word Svarvasa in this verse means residence in Vaikuntha. And Anubhashya by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Ṭhākura. The word Svarvasa refers to the planets where the demigods reside. Although Lord Vishnu is sometimes counted among the demigods, his residence is in Vaikuntha. The heavenly planets created by the Lord's external potency, Maya, are different from his abode. Lord Vishnu is the supreme controller of all controllers. From him, all the demigods have manifested, but they are under the control of Maya, whereas Lord Vishnu is the controller of Maya. The Supreme Lord Vishnu is the root of all existence and the material world. Vishnu is the root of all existence, and the material world is just a dim reflection of his eternal spiritual abode. He is one without a second, and the original source of all spiritual and material manifestations. Lord Vishnu is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna, the original source of all Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva expansions. Text 2. Maya nishpaditam hyatra deva karyam asheshata yad artam avatirnoham angshena brahmanartita. The mission for which I descended on this earth, along with my plenary portion, Balaram, the noble act of diminishing the burden of the earth because of the prayerful request of Brahma, has now been fulfilled. Commentary. I guess when he says commentary, that refers to Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura's Sarartha Darshini, and when he says purport, it refers to Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Prabhupāda's Anubhashya. The word Angshena, commentary. The word Angshena means with Balaram. Purport. The word Angshena generally means incomplete. It indicates an incompatible situation within the material kingdom. But in the realm of spiritual variegatedness, this word refers to the inseparable portions of the Supreme Lord. 3. Kulam vai shapanir dagdham nangshyatyanyo. That's difficult to say. Nangshyatyanyonya vigrahat samudra saptame hyenam purim cha plavayishyati. Now, as a result of the Brahmana's curse, the Yadu dynasty will be annihilated in a fratricidal war. And on the 7th day from today, the ocean will overflood the city of Dwarka. Yarhevayam maya tyakto lokoyam nashtamangala bhavishyatya chirat sadho kalinapi nirakrita. O saintly Uddhav, I will soon abandon this earth. Thereafter, being overwhelmed by the age of Kali, the earth will become bereft of all piety. I'm just going to say Sarartha Darshini. No, I'm going to say, instead of saying commentary and purport, I'll just say Anubhashya and Sarartha Darshini. Anubhashya. Simply by the advent of Krishna, the entire world became filled with all kinds of auspiciousness. Wherever there is no existence of the Supreme Lord, the path of argument is prominent, and the path of disciplic succession is attacked. Sri Krishna, who enjoys variegated spiritual pastimes, is an ocean of nectarian mellows. He's an ocean of ras. Wherever a relationship with Krishna is absent, useless mental speculation becomes prominent, which creates quarrel due to the influence of Kali. If the existence of the Supreme Lord is not realized, people who are deceived by the illusory energy of the Lord are made to run after the path of mental speculation and dry argument. 5. Navastavyam tvayaiveha maya tyakte mahitale jano bhadra ruchir bhadra bhavishyati kalo yuge. My dear Uddhav, you should not remain on the earth after I return to my eternal abode in the spiritual sky, because Kali Yuga will influence human beings so that they will become accustomed to performing all kinds of sinful activities. For this reason, you should not remain here. Anupashya. One second. Anupashya is Chaitanya Charitamrita. Oh yeah, it is. That's why I'm getting confused. What do we call? Yeah, do you remember what? One second. Yeah, I can check really quickly what the commentary is for Srimad Bhagavatam. What the name of it is. Oh, yeah, could you check? Thanks. Okay, we'll find out in a second. Okay, so purport of Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Prabhupāda. Human beings in the present age of Kali are very interested in pursuing sinful propensities because they are unaware of the advent of the Supreme Lord. So the devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are sober and gentle, do not wish to live in this world, which is covered by the darkness of ignorance and is devoid of a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. One of the symptoms of a devotee is that he takes pleasure in residing at a place where the Lord enacts his pastimes. Okay, it's Gaudiya Bhashya. So I'll say that instead of purport from now on. Thanks. And thanks for pointing that out, Rukmini Didi. Okay, so one of the symptoms of a devotee is that he takes pleasure in residing at a place where the Lord enacts his pastimes. Thus, Lord Krishna advised Uddhav not to remain on earth in Kali Yuga. 6. Tvang tu sarvam parityajya sneham swajana bandhushu maya vesha mana samyak samadrig vicharasvagam. Now you should completely give up all attachments to your friends and relatives and fix your mind on me. Thus, being always conscious of me, you should observe all things with equal vision while wandering throughout the world. Sarata Darshini. Oh, Rukmini Didi says that there were 2 commentaries on Bhagavatam by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Ṭhākura Prabhupāda. So I could just call it Gaudiya Bhashya. Okay, I'll do that. Okay. Sarata Darshini. Lord Krishna thought as follows. While remaining on the earth, I satisfied the desires of all those who sincerely wanted to see me. I married many thousands of women, headed by Rukmini, whom I had kidnapped, and I killed many demons in various places and by various contrivances. I attended the religious functions organized by my friends and relatives, so that I have performed many wonderful pastimes for the satisfaction of my devotees. I gave my personal association to all the great devotees in the lower planets. Just to please my mother Devaki, I returned her 6 dead sons, who had been killed by Kamsa. I went to Sutala and blessed my great devotee Bali Maharaj. To return the dead son of my spiritual master Sandipani Muni, I personally went to Yamaraj and thus gave him my audience. I even benedicted the residents of heaven with my personal association when I went there to take the parijata flower for my wife, Satyabhama. I traveled to Mahavaikuntha Loka to recover the dead children of a Brahman. In this way, all the devotees who sincerely desired to see me received the fulfillment of their desires. However, Naranarayan Rishi and the great sages who reside with him at Badarikashram, although hoping to see me, never had their desire fulfilled. I have been on this earth for 125 years, and so the duration of my stay has reached its limit. Being busy with my pastimes, I had no time to see these great sages. And yet, Uddhava is almost as good as me. He is a pure devotee who has been awarded my transcendental opulence. I therefore consider him to be the right person for me to send to Badrikashram. I shall impart transcendental knowledge to Uddhava so that anyone who receives it from him will become detached from material existence. He is the right person to impart this knowledge to the sages at Badrikashram. He can teach them the procedures for rendering devotional service unto me. Loving devotional service rendered to me is the most valuable treasure available in this world. By receiving this knowledge, the desires of Narayan and the other great sages will be fulfilled. The great souls who have surrendered unto me are enriched with transcendental knowledge and detachment from the material world. Sometimes, being fully engaged in my devotional service, they may seemingly forget me, but a pure devotee who possesses love for me will always be protected by his sincere devotion. Even if such a devotee unexpectedly meets with death while forgetting to keep his mind fixed upon me, his love for me is so strong that it will give him protection so that he will eventually attain my lotus feet, which are beyond the vision of materialistic persons. Uddhava is my pure devotee because he can never give up my association. Wow, what an encouraging point. Even if we forget the Lord when we meet with death, or when a devotee forgets the Lord when he meets with death, still his love for him is so strong that it will give him protection, and eventually the devotee will attain his lotus feet. So Uddhava is my pure devotee because he can never give up my association. While contemplating in this way, Sri Krishna inspired Sriman Uddhava to inquire about transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service to him. Someone at the door. He said to Uddhava, "You should give up affection for your relatives and friends in the Yadu dynasty." This affection of Uddhava towards the members of the Yadu dynasty are of two types. 1. Bodily relationship with the Yadus, and 2. Relationship in regard to Krishna. Among the two, Uddhava is advised to give up the former, relationship with the Yadus, bodily relationship with the Yadus. The Lord will explain to Uddhava how to give up this attachment. As far as the latter relationship is concerned, Uddhava is incapable of giving it up. This relationship is not condemned. Uddhava is certainly aware of Krishna's mentality. Gaudiya Bhashya. Whoa. A full cup of Charnamrita from... Okay. Gaudiya Bhashya. The devotees of the Lord are equipoised because they see all material objects in relation with Krishna. Those whose hearts are steady do not become entangled in material affection in the form of aversion to Krishna, and thus do not consider their non-devotee relatives as the object of their sense gratification. Since those persons who see everything in relation to Krishna wander about in this world while giving up the urges of the mind, speech, and body, they are fit to be called devotees of the Lord, or Gosvāmīs. The purport of the Brahma-bhuta Prasanatma verse of the Bhagavad-gīta is the perfect example of seeing all objects with equal vision. Text 7. Yadidang manasa vacha chakshurabhyam shravanadhibi nashvaram griyamanam cha vidhi maya manomayam. My dear Uddhava, know for certain that this material world which you perceive through your mind, speech, eyes, ears, and other senses is an illusory creation that one imagines to be real due to the influence of Maya. You should know that of all the objects of the material senses are temporary. Saratadashini. The question may be raised, What kind of equal vision should Uddhava have? In reply to this, Lord Krishna said, O Uddhava, this material world, which is the object of the senses, such as the mind, speech, eyes, and ears, is temporary and perishable. Gaudiya Bhashya. Any information received from this material body, which consists of the five knowledge acquiring senses, the five working senses, the mind, is limited and destroyed by time because of its temporary nature. The spirit soul coming in contact with the material body develops material designations and desires. Let me reread that. The spirit soul coming in contact with the material body develops material designations and desires the insignificant enjoyments that is associated with this temporary material world. As a result of this misconception, he is bereft of the service of the Supreme Lord. Text 8. Pungso yuktasya nanartho brahma sa gunadosha bhak karma vikarmeti guna dosha dhiyo bhida. That person whose mind is bewildered by illusion perceives many differences in value and meaning among material objects. Thus, one engages constantly on the platform of material good and evil and is bound by such conceptions. Absorbed in material duality, such a person contemplates the performance of compulsory duties, non-performance of such duties, and the performance of forbidden activities. So the performance of compulsory duties is karma, the non-performance of such duties is akarma, and the performance of forbidden activities is vikarma. Sarartha Darshani. An elaboration of the topics described in the previous verse is being given here. The living entities sometimes fall into the trap of duality. They think, this is prescribed, therefore better. That is faulty, therefore inferior. This is a conception of ignorant people. For the fallen souls, what is superior and what is inferior? King Chitraketu has said that all objects in this material world are insignificant. Therefore, it is different to ascertain which one is a curse, which one is a favor, which one is heaven, which one is hell, which one is happiness, and which one is distress. The faults and qualities of an object are attributed to them by the Vedas when it says that prescriptions are qualities and prohibition. I'm sorry, guys. The faults and qualities of objects are attributed to them by the Vedas when it says that prescriptions are qualities and prohibitions are faults. This is a fact. The Vedas have described these subject matters for the benefit of the people who are in ignorance. Karma refers to those activities which are approved by the Vedas. Akarma means to not perform those activities, and vikarma refers to those activities which are prohibited by the Vedas. Those who find faults and qualities are certainly ignorant. Gaudiya Bhashya. Mental speculators distance themselves from the consideration of the absolute truth and engage in enjoying various sense objects, being bereft of the service of the non-dual substance, the son of the king of Vraj. That is not the constitutional propensity of the spirit soul. That is the illusion of the unsuccessful yogis. Being controlled by the conception of faults and qualities, such people accept a few temporary activities as prescriptions and a few activities as prohibition. In this way, they attribute superiority and inferiority to various objects. But if all objects are seen in relation to Krishna, such distinctions will not arise. In order to attain liberation from such conceptions that are based on finding faults and attributing qualities, the topic of Brahma Gayatri has been described. Spiritual knowledge means knowledge with practical application. If one does not know the mystery of this, then he is sure to fall into illusion. Thus, he attributes faults and qualities to different persons and addresses them as Satkarmi, Vikarmi, and Kukarmi. text 9. Oh, wait. Should we read? Let's read text 9 and then we'll finish for today. Tasmad yuktendriya gramo yukta chitta idam jagat atmanikshva svavitatam atmanam mayadhishvare. Therefore, you should control your mind and senses and see this material world, which is full of happiness and distress, as situated within the self. And also see that this individual self is situated within me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Commentary, Sarartha Darshani. Therefore, you should regulate your senses and understand that this material world, which is full of happiness and distress, is situated within the living entity as their object of enjoyment. You should also see this material world, as well as the spirit soul, as being under the full subordination of the Supersoul, which is one of my features. Gaudiya Bhashya. By executing devotional service, all of one's senses become properly engaged. Then only can one realize that Krishna is the controller of all, and that he is situated within everybody as the Supersoul. At that time, all the senses become engaged in the service of the master of the senses, and thus become free from material designations. Impersonalists try to cease all sense enjoyment, thinking that in the perfectional stage, the living entities become inert. However, such self-abnegation simply denies one the opportunity to realize the absolute truth with transcendental senses. The fact is that the master of the senses, Krishna, who is the only proper object of all senses, is realized by rendering devotional service with all the senses. Because the conditioned souls have rejected their constitutional position, and because they want to enjoy without God in this material world, which is created by the illusory energy of the Lord, they fall into bewilderment, thinking themselves as something other than eternal servants of the Supreme Lord, or as instruments for the Lord's service. That is why Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, instructed his pure devotee Uddhava, just as Prahlad instructed his father Hiranyakashipu. Attached householders who do not see how everything is related to Krishna are perpetually deceived so that they cannot see the Supreme Lord as he is, because they are driven by their uncontrolled senses. Lord Vishnu is the ultimate goal of all the senses. The conditioned soul's propensity to enjoy the material senses is nothing but the spirit of enjoyment that is averse to devotional service. When Krishna, the son of the king of Raj, who is one without a second, becomes the only object of all the senses, then the temporary propensity of the material senses is checked, and the spiritual propensity for serving the Supreme Lord with purified senses is awakened. Because there are no longer any material designations in that state of perfection, the distinction between the body and the self, between the form and the owner of the form, and between the qualities and the owner of qualities, cannot be experienced. Because there are no longer any material designations in that state of perfection, the distinction between the body and the self, the form of the owner and the form, the qualities of the owner and the qualities, this cannot be experienced. Sorry, I just wanted to... The Supreme Lord is the only object of worship for everyone. He is the object of service for everyone, and the object of service of all the senses of everyone. The abomination in the form of unwanted conceptions that bring about inauspiciousness in the variegated activities of this material world cannot influence the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vrajendra Nandan. On the spiritual platform, the considerations of Shuddha Dvaita, Dvaita Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and Shuddha Dvaita appear to be situated on the same platform so that the Ekayan system is not obstructed. When the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bhed is revealed, the spirit souls are not seen as distinct from the associates of the Lord who assist him in his pastimes. On that platform, the pure spirit soul thinks himself as a servant of Krishna and thus engages in his devotional service. Unless one sees all objects in relation to Krishna, there is bound to be inauspiciousness. That is why the devotees of the Lord consider uninterrupted service to Krishna as the constitutional and awakened propensity of the spirit soul. People who cannot realize the Supreme Lord, the enjoyer of transcendental pastimes, become separated from Lord Achyuta and thus become faithful to temporary and imaginary objects. This is due to not understanding the essential characteristics of the Supreme Lord. In order to open the eyes of such blind people, the Lord, as the supreme instructor, expressed his desire to guide Uddhava and other similar servants of Uddhava, who have no interest in the karmakanda system of the Vedas, by giving them invaluable instructions. So tomorrow we will continue on. Krishna says, being fully endowed with conclusive knowledge of the Vedas and having realized the ultimate purpose of such knowledge and practice, you will be able to perceive the pure self and become self-satisfied. In this way, you will become dear to all living beings, headed by the demigods, and you will never be obstructed by any impediment. So we will continue reading on from that point tomorrow. Verse 10. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari, Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju Ki Jai, Nityalla Pravishta Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar, Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosvāmī Maharaj Śrīla Gurudev Ki Jai. Nityalla Pravishta Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar, Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosvāmī Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalla Pravishta Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Śrīla Prabhupāda Ki Jai. Nityalla Pravishta Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar, Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosvāmī Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalla Pravishta Vishnupad Ashtotara Shata Shishimar, Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda Ki Jai. Tadiya Parashad Vrinda Ki Jai. Nityalla Pravishta Mahabhagavat Śrīla Gaurkishora Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalla Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Ṭhākura Ki Jai. Nityalla Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath, Shara Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Ṭhākura Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala, Gaura Mandala, Vraja Mandala, Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kund Ki Jai. Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Shrimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Shri Uddhava-gīta Ki Jai. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura Sarartha Darshini Vritti Ki Jai. Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda Gaudiya Anubhashya Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Vo. Dandavat. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vancha. Hari Bol everybody. Oh, Hari Bol Narayani Didi and Raj Bhuvan Yadav ji. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. And Cristiano Luna. Hare Krishna. Alright, so I'll see you all tomorrow. Pranams Indira Mataji. Thanks for letting me go over time today. I'll try not to do that tomorrow. I'll set up the reading tomorrow so that we won't go over time. Alright, Dandavat pranams everybody. Hare Krishna.